Good morning, this is Angela with Parco's Permaculture. I'm down on the Sandy River with 3 of my kids today. I don't know where Bea is. She's off with a group of her friends. We're in kind of a remote hidden beach here. Hi, George. Enjoying the hot weather. Enjoying staying cool by the river during the hot weather especially. It's really lovely out here and we're just having a relaxing afternoon. But I thought I would make a quick video to talk about something that is really apparent in riparian areas where you have that edge effect. Now, I have a whole video on edge effect where I talk about how we can maximize diversity and nature maximizes diversity and potential along the edges where 2 different biomes overlap, right? Where you have an overlap of 2 different areas that have distinct sets of characteristics and distinct sets of species. Here along the river's edge, you end up with these sandy, rocky beaches, like this behind me, where there is very little organic matter whatsoever. And you have these large areas that are denuded of vegetation, both because of the lack of organic matter, and mostly because the river erodes the organic matter and takes it away farther downstream. But in the areas where the river flow either deposits a small amount of organic material or where there are areas along the riverbank that for whatever reason have become sheltered from the effects of wind and water and erosion, you end up with pioneer species taking root, like this fern behind me here. Hi, George. I'll cut in some other video of other areas. I'll save the video for a bit later, but here you can see patches where shrubs have come in and colonized an area that was previously just sand and rocks. They form these little islands of shrubs around which habitat is created. And it has me thinking a lot about how important the role of pioneer species are. Those are those species that can come into an area that has low fertility, that has low productivity, that has low biodiversity. And they are really hardy, resilient, and often very vigorous species. And they can take up residence in an area where other species cannot thrive. And we often think of these pioneer species as invasive because they have the potential to be invasive in an area that has a really depleted set of conditions, right? So pioneer species come in, they're often leguminous, often they fix nitrogen because they can come in and colonize an area that has low fertility, low nitrogen in the soil. And they can take up residence when less resilient plants cannot. And what you find when you get that one pioneer species comes in, you may find that they end up taking over a large area because nothing else can grow, and you end up with almost a monoculture. And in fact, Ben Falk had a good video on this a while ago about dealing with invasive Japanese knotweed along the river's edge. You should go check out his little video. So what you get with a pioneer species that comes in is that they can dominate for a while. But the set of conditions that they need tend to be nutrient-poor soil, an area where nothing else grows, and often it's high sun, intense sun. But as the pioneer species gets established, what it does is it creates habitat for other species. It fixes nitrogen in the soil. The leaves die on the plants and fall to the ground. The plant may get root dieback, and all of that builds fertility. You end up with the plant itself shading an area, and that allows other species to begin to come in. So the pioneer species comes in and sets up shop and begins to transform in areas. What you find with pioneer species in these riparian areas is that initial hardy shrub moves in. And not only does it create fertility as its own leaves die and as it creates shade for other plants to move in, but also fertility tends to collect around these plants. When there are flooding events from the river, any organic material is washed up around these stems and trunks of these plants and it accumulates there. And so you have this rapid increase in fertility. And again, that addition of shade that allows plants like this Douglas aster to move in when they could not previously. While these pioneer species can feel really aggressive, it's important that we learn how to utilize them in a permaculture system and for habitat restoration. The conditions can become more suitable for other species to come in, colonize, and you start to get biodiversity increasing. You start to get changes in the condition because of an increase in fertility. So when you have pioneer species, when you have those nitrogen fixers that can feel really aggressive, like perhaps you are getting, locust in your area, or you're getting those autumn olives move in. they can live there because the area is so depleted to begin with, much like the sandy, rocky beach. And I've been thinking a lot about not only understanding how pioneer species work, how they operate in an edge, how they operate in areas that are low fertility and transform it, and are the first step in creating abundance. When we have permaculture design and we are looking to take an area that is desertified, take an area with low fertility, let's say like my backyard that had sod on it, and that was it, no topsoil at all, just clay subsoil and rocks, and that was it. Gesundheit, George. That was it. Those pioneer species, in my case, white clover was one of them, but I've also used Siberian pea shrub, I've also used gummy berries, I've also used black locust. So when you bring those pioneer species in, it can feel like they're taking over, but as they become mature and established, what you often see is that they've changed the conditions so much for the better for other species, but so that those pioneer species no longer really like that area and they eventually die off. And in our permaculture design, when we have these areas that are super depleted, how could we maximize the use of pioneer species to let them do the work of changing the conditions for us, to let them do the work of improving the area and making it suitable for those species that we want to cultivate to be able to exist? Pioneer species are a tool. We often cycle them in the beginning of our permaculture design, and they either cycle themselves out or we cycle them out later as the system begins to mature. We can think of them as nurse trees, nurse species that help support our food crops while they're young. We can think of them as species that we are using for their potential to fix nitrogen in the soil, to create shade, create habitat for other species. What you see here along the riverbank is such an excellent example of a pioneer species, and then other species naturally begin to colonize around it. Pioneer species are species that can heal a desertified landscape. They can heal an area that has been depleted and wounded and stripped of its fertility and biodiversity. While they may be aggressive, assertive, they may soak up all of the sun, they may fill in an area, pioneers have a role, and if we understand what they are in permaculture, we can harness them and use them to heal the landscapes, much like my backyard, much like huge areas that have been completely destroyed. Their soil biome has been destroyed by industrial agriculture. We can use pioneer species as a tool in our toolbox of permaculture to heal the land and help bring it back to peak abundance. So I'm going to get back to listening to my audiobook, and actually brought some sewing with me and chilling out on the beach with my feet in the water. I hope this video was helpful. I hope that if you have a landscape that is just really stripped of everything that you need to start a permaculture garden, take a step back and say, okay, I actually can't start at step one. I need to back up, and I need to have these precursor steps. I need to have this set up my system before I can even begin to plant. And think about how you can use pioneer species to your benefit so that you can kickstart your system. You can get your system up and running. You can create habitat, increase fertility, so that you can begin to put in those cultivated crops. I'll be back very soon from my own permaculture garden in Portland, Oregon. Please check out my Patreon down below, and please click like and subscribe. Those are great ways you can support this channel. Thanks.